Hello, friends. I am Chevee. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? I hope it's fantastic. Everything here is great. Chris asked questions on Monday that I will get to at some point, but he asked something else yesterday as a follow up. I want to follow up on yesterday's talk. So yesterday I talked about how I realized that coming back from Gen Con, I didn't have like a post-convention crash. I felt really good, actually. I felt like, oh, I belong. Home is my spot and all that sort of stuff. And so he asked, that he's been feeling less likely to or being adverse to large gatherings, whereas before he was much more into large gatherings. And he says that he thinks it's that most people have lost their social skills, and it feels that way too many are habitual line crossers when it comes to the social contract we should all have when being in public together. Did the human malware event, I like that, I hadn't heard of it phrased that way. His question is, did the human malware event change your feelings towards attending massive public gatherings like Gen Con at all? I find myself seeking out small gatherings more now and avoiding massive events more than I ever have. Yes, and not in the way you're thinking of, I think. First of all, the malware event has allowed me to transition to a work from home life, which is phenomenal. I have an amazing wife, an amazing best friend slash coworker wife. She's not a coworker. We just joke that she's my favorite because we different employers, all that sort of stuff. But I have a very nice home life, and I've always been somewhat of a homebody. I've always been. I would rather do things in my space than anywhere else. That's even true when my house was kind of contentious. I still would just. I would have rather stayed home, but I had to escape, so I would go other places. Part of finding a good partner and having a good home space is like I don't go to game night much anymore. Game night at the library. That used to be an escape for me. I'd rather play games here. I don't want to go there. Opposite to what you're saying, smaller gatherings seem like more of a problem for me. Like I don't feel like going to small. If I'm going to go do something, I want to go big or go home. And the funny quote that I've seen recently is people who say go big or go home severely underestimate my desire to go home. And that's true. What I found at Gen Con, I did get some sort of battery recharge, some sort of social recharge there, but it's not because of the size of the crowd. And it's also, I didn't feel dominated by the size of the crowd either. I felt recharged from the personal meetings that I had, like with friends that I haven't seen in a while, with the hugs and that kind of stuff. And the interesting part, so contrary to what you're saying, the social contract stuff, I found this year at Gen Con, I was much more forgiving, I guess. I didn't find myself being annoyed trying to walk through the crowd. It can be wildly annoying. In what I discovered, so to contrast Gen Con with Essen, I know that people like to do this a lot. The German crowds, when you get into a crowded hall with a bunch of Germans, if you just stop walking in the middle of like an area that's designated as a walkway, right? Carpeted aisle between booths. If you just stop and go, hey, look at that, they will run into you and they will yell at you for being in their way. Like, this is a walkway, not a pause and look way. If you want to pause and look, step off the walkway. At Gen Con, people do it constantly. And I guess that's a true, like, European American difference. And so when you're walking the halls in Gen Con, people in front of you will just stop. You'll be walking along and then all of a sudden you can't continue forward because the aisle's blocked because now we're taking pictures or whatever. And I found this year I had a lot more patience for that. I found that I was much more willing to let people have their moment. And I think part of that is because the malware event kind of reset some of those, some friendships and some, maybe what I realized was that we don't have those people are experiencing something that they couldn't experience for a while, and now they're getting the chance to again, and let them have their moment, sort of thing. So I was a little bit surprised at myself at how patient I was walking through the crowd the few times that I got to do it. You know, generally I only left the booth to pee, and I had maybe 2 or 3 meetings I needed to attend, and during booth hours. And so when I went out to walk, or like I think I maybe went and bought something. Yeah, I went and bought something one time. I just kind of strolled, and it was like, it was not. I didn't have any place to be. Like, I just kind of took my time and went with the crowd, and I would not have done that years ago. I would have. I've always been the let's get it over with so I can relax person. I'm that guy that you get me on the crew, and it's like, let's just work ourselves to death until it's done, and then we can take the rest of the time off. Not realizing that if you work yourself to death until it's done, there's just more work to do. Like it's not like you get to take 2 weeks off because you worked yourself to death for 4 days. That's not how life works. But that's who I was as a person. Whereas this year, it was much more like, hey, I'm just here to chill. And I think part of it is that my life is so chill, right? And part of it was because I didn't go last year. I think that also kind of changed my perspective. Having a year off was like, oh, I'm just happy to be here, right? I was so extremely happy to be at Gen Con. It was super exhausting, tiring. I mean, the whole thing, right? It was a headache mentally, physically, but it was just so nice. I was so freaking happy to be there. And maybe someday I'll be able to tell you that story in full. And if you know me personally, there's more to the story that I'm not going to ever share publicly. But it felt so good to be there wearing my gear with the banner that I was standing in front of, with the products I was selling. It felt phenomenal. And I can't wait to do it again. Like, let's go. Let's go. You know? So did the malware event change? Yeah. I think that I would rather go to, maybe the size of the event doesn't seem to bother me that much, but I'm definitely not on social media as much as I used to be. I'm not chasing approval. I'm not chasing pictures. I'm not chasing huge crowds because that's where the excitement is. I've been chasing individual moments, and I can find those individual moments regardless of the size of the gathering. I can find those moments with just the people that are around me. And I've always been, like I said yesterday, I consider myself an introvert, but I'm very good at just talking to people. I'm very good at just saying, hey, how you doing? And then if a conversation starts, I'll run with it, and it's not a problem. I will feel very awkward and gross during doing it, but I'm good. I'm okay with it. Like, I can do it. And so I can find to myself talking to just about anybody in any situation. We were in downtown Indy, and there was some youth behind us, and this guy came past, like they were walking right behind us. This guy was saying some weird shit, walking past all of us, and they were kind of mocking him after he left. And I turned around and said something to them, and they were like, what? They were shocked that I turned around and said something to them. And I said it again, and they were just like, okay, and they wandered off. And Dawn, one of our longtime helpers, has said, look at you trying to connect with the youth. And I'm like, I guess I am just some crazy old man at this point. But that's just, I'm okay with talking to people. I just would rather not. I would rather sit at home with a book in my hand and read, or play a video game, or play guitar, or whatever I'm doing lately. But I guess to your point, Chris, I'm more interested in connection than I am being a part of something bigger. When I was at Gen Con, I didn't feel like I was part of Gen Con. Like, this is, like this some massive thing. I felt like I was a part of this small collective of people at this small station within the larger picture of Gen Con. And that's where I felt comfortable. So yeah, I guess so. Maybe I did seek out a smaller gathering within the larger gathering, and that's how I got by. But I was still pumped to be there. I don't know. I would say, just in general, I don't attend gatherings. I probably should more. I should have more gatherings here. I should try to cultivate better friendships, but I'm not good at that. So here we are. What about you guys? Did the human malware event change the way that you approach gatherings? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends and wonderful people. I really appreciate you. And I'll see you again tomorrow. Today's word you should know sounds smart is yardarm. It's a noun meaning either one of the outer portions of a square sail. During the regatta, the yachts sailed yardarm to yardarm, appearing as though they may collide at any moment. Yardarm, Y-A-R-D-A-R-M. I knew that word as a Marine. I think I have to know that word.